him back in on our show. I want to welcome Bud Whitehorn. He's going to help co-host. He'll be doing some co-hosting with us. He's been helping us all along, so he's been here, but now he's in the hot seat as a co-host helping us out. Today, we have Executive Director Tierre Webster. We're going to get into it thick with him. But before we do, I want to remind you, next week we have Sheriff Kevin Torgelson. I have trouble with his last name. Kevin Torgelson, he'll be here on the 15th. And then on the 22nd, we have board member Walter Smith, who's the counsel for Minnesotans of African Heritage. He's on the board there. So tune in for that. So you know, what we're about here at Barbershop Talk is being a voice for the community, keeping it 100, keeping the community, speaking those voices that are not heard. Our goal is, we have a passion for the African American community, we have a passion for the at-risk community, we have a passion for the minority community, and we have a passion for the community as a whole. As Paul Wellstone said, we all do better when we all do better, and that's what this is all about, making sure our community, our South Minnesota community, is better. So come with us as we grow. We're adding things in. This is grassroots, as you can tell, but we're adding some things in on the front end of the new year. So if you have any comments, critiques, helps, all that, come out, because this is a community endeavor for the community. All right, so as we go forward, I'm going to add in a segment, right? And it's called Elephant in the Room, right? Elephant in the Room. All right, we have Tierre here, and he's being put on the hot spot, so he really doesn't have to answer to this, but Bud does, because he's a co-host. But if you know anything about elephants in the room, right, it's when you walk in a room or you're at that Thanksgiving dinner, and there's this topic or this person, right, and you know it's an issue of concern, but no one talks about it. So it's the big elephant in the room that no one talks about. We need to start doing that here on Barbershop Talk. So we're going to add this segment in. Tell us what you think. Text us with some questions on this. So as we go into elephant in the room, my first topic, we'll just do two today. I'm from Indianapolis, Indiana, all right? Colts territory, right? Colts. And unfortunately. Unfortunately. So in 2008, they got rid of Peyton Manning, and I said, for all intents and purposes, screw them, right? So I started liking the Packers, right? NFC North. My brother, Tierre, you are from Minneapolis, Vikings. Bud, you are from Chicago. The Bears. Chicago Bears. So this is our first elephant in the room topic. Bud, how are the Bears 9-3 or whatever and top of the NFC North? 8-4.
Unfortunately, but we gotta, you know, Chicago Bears is always based on defense. We went back to what we were based on this year, and I think it's working. The formula that we started years ago when they
80s.
Yeah. We back to it, man. I think it's working, man. We went with the offense for a few years with Jay Cutler.
Yeah.
I really like him, but we back to what we need, what we got.
Oh man, it's doing me wrong, and I'm a Packer fan now, as you all may know.
It's okay, I forgive you.
Oh man,
still my boy, man. You know.
Tia, how you doing, man? Vikings, man. They started out and dipped a little bit. Okay, all right. But I had to talk about that because that is the elephant room. How are the Bears the top of the NFC North?
You acting like that's a.
Well, yeah.
You can't be too surprised, man.
We're
we gotta permit.
Well,
you can if you want to be, if you live in a different reality. But if you see what I see, man, you wouldn't be surprised.
And I'm from Naptown. We hate Chicago anyway.
Oh yeah, I know, man.
You know,
I think there's a little jealousy involved, even though y'all beat us for the Super Bowl.
Yeah, yes, that's right. So that's
the Super Bowl, man.
That's full circle, right there.
We did have it.
That's right.
Yeah.
Okay, topic 2, and I'm going to try to be neutral on this. And my good brother Tierre, you can. I know we put you on the spot here. Yes, well, this week, and Bud, you were on the committee. The community basically, with an action group, decided to come up with this idea. First, a street being named after Martin Luther King, and then it became a park, East Park. And I was part of that committee, but again, in this context, I want to be neutral. I want to know your thoughts on this because I got so many comments on this, and let me throw these comments out there. Being a part of this, Tuesday, the park board decided to name East Park MLK Park. There was one dissenting vote, and you can see it in the minutes. And his dissenting vote was pretty cool. He said, we want to take this back to the neighborhood association prior to. But the board said, nope, this is good. We've had enough warning or whatever, so we're just going to go ahead and name it East Park. MLK Park. They did that, ratified it, it was good to go. Community covered it, as you know. After that, the aftermath I got from that was interesting. This is the elephant in the room I would love to discuss with you all for a couple of seconds. I got a couple of reactions. One reaction was someone came to me very passionate and almost vibrating. She was so mad, saying, that is so patronizing of Rochester because a lot of minorities are out there. And so we're being patronizing to the community naming this park after Dr. Martin Luther King. And she was passionate, and we were going on, and I was engaging in it or whatever. But that threw me back, given who this person was. And it went on to say, why don't we name, and I'm just going to go there, this is the barbershop, why don't we name Marion Road, Hispanic Park, or Hispanic Street or whatever. That's how violent it was getting. And she's a good person and whatever, and whatever, but that was one reaction I got. It's patronizing to name this after Dr. Martin Luther King, no less at a park that has African Americans in it. And then yesterday I was at the follow-up meeting with the neighborhood association. There was a lot of vitriol around, you didn't tell us first, therefore don't do it. What are your thoughts on that, on this little elephant in the room? Because I know there's all kinds of thoughts around it, both black, white, and purple, on why this is good or why it's not good, both in our community and outside our community.
Yeah, so first let me thank you, brothers, for allowing me to be here.
Yeah.
It's really a pleasure. When I think about the urban community, specifically South Minneapolis, there were two main platforms where information was being conveyed, relationships were being built. The first one that comes to mind, and Dr. King was kind of the one that helped push that, was the church. And so that's where dialogue happened,
Right.
and cultural policies were put into play, if you will. And then the other was the barbershop.
Right.
And so it was interesting. I was thinking about this on the way here, and I'm going to answer your question. The barbershop in South Minneapolis played a critical role for building the community up. And it was interesting. I don't know where folks, in terms of how they feel about these persons, but you would see people like Clem Haskins and Denny Green and different athletes and different figures coming to the barbershop. And then you would also have the everyday factory workers. You would have the pimps and the drug dealers. And everyone was coming together, having conversation and doing life together. And so I applaud you for your leadership around this. This is cutting edge, and it's meaningful to me. What do I think about the elephant in the room? Again, man, I applaud you for your willingness to put yourself out there, because I think you're right. I think we do need to have things. If we're going to be true to be an inclusive community, we need to be a community that honors and highlights those that have made impact and allowed us to be an inclusive community. And so certainly I think we ought to never forget Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. I think with that, it's important that the story is told who he is.
True.
And so I think it can be patronizing if we name a park after someone, but the story isn't tied to it.
Right.
I also wonder, I think if you really wanted to get some heat, let's talk about naming a park after President Obama.
Right.
Then you really feel some But let me not get ahead of myself.
That was definitely, I don't think I would have made it.
He wouldn't make it past go,
to this
man.
day if we would have done that. But I think, just to be controversial, that is coming.
Yeah.
He's a landmark dude, president, very respectful. And I think that's coming, but and some cities have gone that far, but not.
And to be clear, for I know we have a viewing audience for our both conservative and liberal audience. Tierre am one that supports the seat, and I may get some heat from you all from that. But I'm the type of guy who's ever in office, we get behind these because our nation's impacted by it. And as a Bible believer, God has allowed things to be so. With your question though, what I appreciate about this idea of inclusivity and diversity is I actually want to know people. I want to see people irate. If
Right.
they're not feeling it,
Right.
let me hear it.
Right.
Because one thing about it is when words aren't said, I have to come to my own conclusion.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Once people start bringing words to the table,
right.
then I can hold them to those words and let's have a conversation.
Right.
And so I appreciate when people will be courageous enough to challenge things that seem obvious.
Right. Right.
This is long overdue.
Right.
This should have been done.
Yeah.
And it's unfortunate that it hadn't. But thank you for your work around this.
Yeah, and it was fun. I mean, and the Post Bulletin has a good write-up on it, and it basically boiled down to a collaborative talk about it last night. But no doubt it was heated, it was passionate. But the funny part is the both sides that I got about it. I got something on Facebook, from the African American people. Who cares that MLK is being named? But I know a lot of people have opinions about it, and in our South Minnesota community, the Minnesota Nice of us all, we tend not to go there. We'll go there in barbershops, right? But we won't in our local community. So it definitely was spirited yesterday in the park board aftermath meeting, but we came to some good thoughts. Just to let everybody know, the park board is going forward with the MLK name. If you want your comments known, the Neighborhood Association will be meeting on that. The Diversity Council, City of Rochester, the NAACP, they will be planning events around the idea of the Martin Luther King Park. So if you want to get involved, get involved. They've already ordered the signage, but they wanted to add some different things to it to make it more monumental, if you will, for the park. So if you're interested, get involved. But certainly that was it was interesting to see how the community reacted to the idea of that name shift and how it got kind of political. And there was a technicality, I want to be very honest, on the park board's part on how they went about it. But it certainly is going to be named. So I thought I'd throw that out there as a topic. So, as I said, we have Executive Director Tierre Webster with us today. Used to work for social services, was a supervisor there. This man knows social services. He's a licensed social worker. Great man. If you don't know him, he's done a lot in the community. So it's with great thanks that he's here today. He's the Executive Director of Next Chapter Ministries, which is a reentry ministry, if I am naming it correctly. So we're thankful that he's here today as not only a leader of Next Chapter Ministry, but a community leader. This brother does a lot of stuff. He's around. He does a lot of stuff. So thank you for being with us today. Gil's back there shaking his head. Nah, he ain't no leader. So Tia, tell us about Next Chapter, what it does. I know you've been there maybe like 2 or 3 years.
Yeah.
What y'all doing over there?
Yes, I've been going on. It'll be 3 years in May. I think Next Chapter obviously has a long history. 20 years in the making. We've been doing good things over these 20 years. I think where we are, we moved from being a small faith-based organization, and still relatively small in terms of annual budget, but I think the impact that we're making is more broad now. Oh, good. So we're going from what I believe is maybe a church organization, but not really, maybe a social service organization, but not really, to no, we're an organization that serves holistically individuals and families that are generationally impacted by the cycle of crime. Nice. And the way we do that is through our male residential program, non-residential program for women that are in this cycle, and then preventative, but also with youth that are already in the system through our youth programming. And so we're convinced that you're not going to eradicate crime, you're not going to change the narrative, focusing on the individual. You got to take a family system approach. You got to look at 2 or 3 generations. And so for our Bible readers, that's biblical, lessons and curses, 2, 3 generations. And for the practitioners, it's best practice. It's called 2-gen, but we call it a multi-gen approach.
Oh, wow. So you're in the hotbed of prior administration, presidential administration, criminal justice reform. About 3 weeks ago, Donald Trump said he was going to get his piece of criminal justice reform, and I'm not sure if his, and I'm not dissing him, I need to read actually what his thoughts are, but I don't know if his package includes a reentry piece. I know President Obama's piece did. So you're in the hotbed of some changing things. Minnesota is trying to do some things around law as it relates to drugs and what have you. How do you feel in this pivotal position particularly in a community, and thankfully it's grown a lot since I've been at the public defender office in the last 10 years. How are you gaining ground, particularly in dealing with people, how they think about crime and former felons and change, even spiritual change?
Yeah. Well, I would like to say, I hope we're gaining ground. We definitely see the ground we're gaining with the families that we're serving. I think there is a role for us to bring community awareness. When you look at the realities of mass incarceration,
right?
I think that's something that everyone ought to be irate about. When you have the trajectory that 1 in 3 black males will be going to prison,
right?
We ought to be ticked off about that.
Oh, absolutely.
And we ought to think collectively, what can we do to help solve these problems? Now, let me also say that this is a public health issue.
Thank you.
Okay?
Thank you.
And so because it's a public health issue, we all need to be rallying together. And here's where I really believe strongly, as a conservative, Christian, black, white, Mexican male, I believe not only should we be pushing this agenda,
right,
but the liberal minds as well.
I totally agree.
I believe that this is an opportunity for true inclusivity to show the impact. So I think this is a mission that, and I preach this, don't leave your differences aside, bring your differences to the table.
Right.
And let's figure out how we can crack this complex nut
right
here.
Yeah, and that's what, when I have an opportunity to speak in the courts or write a report, I try to let the court know this is a public health or public safety issue.
It is.
Stop looking at it as a black and white issue or a them issue. And there's some great judges and court officials, so I don't want to diss them. But still, the mentality is not what you're saying. They don't look at it holistically. How do we change behavior so we have a safe public and there's public health to it? So I applaud you for it.
And let me be clear. I mean, and I know we probably have a diverse viewing audience.
Right.
It is a black issue, though. Let's not move from that.
Right.
It's a systemic issue.
Right.
And we as African Americans have had very little influence on policy, legislation, things of that nature. So I'm not trying to bypass that. It is a black issue.
Right.
And our families are impacted by it significantly. I mean, and it can go back to, I mean, you can kind of trace it through our history.
Oh, no doubt.
Slavery.
Right.
And you can look at, the crack era.
Right.
And I mean,
generational curses, man.
Generational. And,
right.
and it's very intentional.
Yes.
But I'm just the type of dude that, though it's intentional and though there's walls in place to keep us out or what have you, I believe together. And, there were white folks marching with Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And as a light-skinned man, I understand that I'm going to get in some doors that some of my other brothers and sisters won't, that are dark-skinned. And I'm willing to put myself on the line so that we can make an impact.
That's good.
Amen.
The New Jim Crow is a book you need to look at in regards to what he just said. And Dr. Joy DeGroy and her concept of the post-traumatic slave syndrome, if you dare venture down that road, she talks a lot about a lot of that stuff and some other professionals. But those are two things you can look into. But
so getting back to the next chapter, Ministries. The person just want to know how can they get involved, or what qualifications you need to get into that. Can you speak on that?
Yeah, and so I mean, so oftentimes our mind goes to the residential program, but we're much more than that.
Exactly.
I would say if you're interested in Next Chapter, go to our website, nextchapterrochester.org. See what we do. Give us a call. Now, I'll be honest that I'm not always in the office, but I love people to stop by the office. I have an open door policy, and every person's valuable.
Yeah.
And so stop by the office. Let's get a cup of coffee. If you're a legislator, if you're a senator, or if you're a brother or sister that is deeply immersed in the cycle, I want to spend time, get to know you, and see how we might make a difference.
How do you deal with, and this is a crazy question, I think, and this is needed, when you do what you do and you have people who see it and they feel empathy, sympathy, and it's something to gain their help and support, but they're not getting the bigger picture. If you know what I'm saying, they don't get the holistic, the historical trauma piece. And so initially they might say, hey, great Tierre, I'll support your organization, but holistically they don't get it. And I say this in the sense that this really hits when, in my opinion, when there's policy on the table, or when I'm in front of a judge, sympathy, empathy of the situation, but they don't get, okay, wait a minute. The decision needs to be made on policy and also with this individual holistically. I need that, certainly the empathy is great, but I need to see this issue as, if I don't deal with this now, I'm gonna deal with it in 10 years. And it's still gonna be a public safety issue.
So, not real sure what your question is, but let me say this. We do know locally in our county detention center, it costs $160,000 to house a male offender per year. It costs $240,000 thereabouts if we're going to house a juvenile in the juvenile detention center a year. Okay? And so when we talk about return on investment, wherever you stand as a political, from your political perspective, as a liberal or conservative, I think we all would concur that our dollars can be used in better ways.
Absolutely.
And so I think this is a great opportunity for us to use our dollars together on the front end. And what I've been so proud of, man, our average length of stay in our residential program went from 3 months when I came 2.5 years ago. Now we've been as high as 8.5, 9 months average length of stay. So if we can get it to a year, do the math, and I'm not a mathematician, but if we get someone living in our home for a year, and we have some folks that we all know, that have been there over a year, we're saving $160,000 in tax dollars. They're paying child support, so they're paying their back debt to society, and they're employed, so they're contributing tax dollars. Folks, this is no brainer, man. This is